Hi, everyone. We're back. So I think that you and I were surprised about the response we got on some of our
We
clips.
got quite a bit of engagement.
Yeah. I think people were excited about it.
I was excited about it. I was happy to sit down and have a conversation. And I think that we have an opportunity in front of us to sit down and do more conversations, not only between ourselves, but with other people. So, with that being said,
Yeah.
want to walk people through what our idea is?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I will welcome you all to our official podcast, Politics Next Door. And I think that the goal of our podcast is to have real conversations with, everyone who's willing to have the conversations with us, but about like things going on locally, local government policy, advocacy, community organizing, and how you are able to like get involved in all those spaces and what it means to be involved in all those spaces. I know you and I have talked a lot about the inaccessibility of local government and how it is the most impactful area of government and of legislating and of politics. And it's also the one that like most people don't know a ton about, which is crazy because it affects our everyday lives. But it's also like that way intentionally, right? We've talked a lot about that.
Yeah, it's a bit archaic, it's a bit boring, but it's really
Is it
important
ever?
in terms of how it functions. But I think
Yes.
for us and the purpose of our podcast is not necessarily to be a wonky like policy podcast, but to make the conversation itself between us about what goes on locally, even what goes on nationally,
Yeah.
and with others within the community, an accessible thing
Yeah.
and not a divisive thing, because I think that's what we see so often now in politics
Yeah.
is that everything
Yep.
is so divisive and it's kind of us against them,
Mm-hmm.
whoever us or them is. And in
Mm-hmm.
this case, we're all part of the same community.
Yeah.
And this is the case everywhere. But I think for our podcast, one of the primary goals is to bring people from across the community together to discuss things that are going on in the community and what those solutions might be.
Yeah.
And wherever that falls on like a political spectrum is where it happens to fall. But we want to discuss like the mechanics of how to get things done
Yeah.
and where we can find common ground to get things done within the
Mm-hmm.
community.
Mm-hmm. And I I know you and I have talked about this offline, but the other thing, because you bring up a really good point about like, I don't think it needs to be conversations that are um unproductive because of our alternate viewpoints or feelings on the whatever we're talking about. I think we've talked a lot about like getting to know the people, the places, and the spaces a lot better, and like making sure people are armed with knowledge to make the conclusion they want to make. Um, like we live in a time where so much of our information is not necessarily trustworthy, and like we are forcing people to like make decisions around information that like may not be based in fact, is based solely in entertainment and
Right.
from sources that like have always been like trusted institutions also. Like I love to like poke fun at Fox News, right? And how it they literally identify as like entertainment, not news necessarily anymore. But like I think we lose sight of the fact that like for a really long time, like Fox News was like a place that people could rely on to give them maybe not unbiased, but like at least factual information.
Right.
um and so like I think we expect people to like make this like massive cultural change around that, even though like this institution, this source they've always trusted and has always produced factual information for them, now we're expecting them to just go like, oh no, you're right, I don't trust this thing anymore. And so like I think that giving people like some sort of source or place to go to be like, I'd really like to know more about like local law X or whatever, is like kind of a treasure in this time. Like it is just going to be like this really unfiltered, like casual conversation around the things that like matter and are impactful, but that we might not know about. So like making it more accessible, making it like easier to talk about in all of our everyday lives, right? Um, and also just like making politics like joyful again. Joy is an
Yeah,
act of
making it
resistance.
something that you engage in with the community for the betterment of the community and
Oh,
not necessarily for the
yes.
betterment of yourself.
Oh, yeah.
Things might be good for you in terms of solutions, but that's not your
Mm,
primary motivating factor. It's not my primary motivating factor.
yeah.
I think the idea is to kind of cut through, like we said before, the divisiveness and have a conversation about what can we do together.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is missing. And I think what you're mentioning about like Fox
Mhm.
and for me it was CNN. Like I watched CNN
Yeah.
growing up, and I always figured like that was the middle. To me, Fox was
Yeah.
more conservative,
Mhm.
and NBC was more liberal, and CNN was more in the middle, or that was my perception.
Yeah.
Um, but now I think everybody, particularly younger people, but everybody across the political spectrum is like, oh, all these news shows are sponsored
Yeah.
and therefore potentially corrupted by whatever money they have, and influenced by is a
By
better word.
interests, whatever those
Yeah.
interests are. Yeah.
We're not like that. We're doing all of this
No.
on our own, right?
Nope. We're not being paid. Surprise.
Nobody's coming here and telling us what to say. So we can kind of work things out on our own without having to worry about somebody coming to us after the fact and having,
Yeah.
feedback that may or may not be positive.
Yeah. I think so one of the interesting things about like a platform like this is that you know folks, I know folks separately, but there is like a removal of like that interpersonal exchange right now, not between you and I, but between whoever's listening. And so like I kind of want to paint a picture of like how we even came together on this very ambitious mission to like make local politics and government accessible. And I know it started when you sent me a message on my Kate Wood for Albany Instagram. But how did you become like tell us a little bit about how you became interested in this stuff initially? Because I just know like it was just kind of like we connected over like this shared interest.
Yeah, it's kind of like an aligning of the stars for me because
Mhm.
I've always been interested in politics. And my
Mhm.
grandmother likes to tell people the story of like when I was 3 or 4 years old, I was watching Supreme Court confirmation hearings
Mhm.
with my grandfather and like, what's this? What are they talking about?
You should probably tell everyone your name, by the way.
I'm Tyler.
Forgot that part.
Yeah. So when I was a kid, I was always watching political shows
Mhm.
and I continued that growing up. And, you kind of establish your political identity, I think, through your surroundings and what your parents might say or what you hear somebody
Yeah.
else say, and then develop your own thoughts later on,
Yeah.
kind of along the way. Um, and then, I came of voting age when Obama was running for president.
Yeah.
Right. So that was my first election. And I was like, Obama's going to kill this. So I want him to win. I'm not going
Yeah.
to vote because I live in New York and he's going to win anyway. And
Yeah.
I'm just happy that he's going to win.
Oh, so you
It
didn't
became
vote?
obvious. I didn't vote, but at that time I was in the military and it was like it was my first election where I was able to vote, but
Mhm.
also I needed to vote like absentee or whatever you have to do
Right.
because I was overseas.
Okay. Where were you stationed?
I was in Korea at that time.
Oh, okay.
And I just I didn't put the dots together about like how to vote. So
Would
that's one
you
thing to talk
say-
about too, because I think
Yeah.
a lot of people don't even know the different ways that you can vote. Some
Mhm.
forms of voting have come under fire in the last 4 or 5
Yeah,
years.
yeah. Can I ask a question? Would
Yeah.
you say that that was normal for other like were the majority of the folks that you were stationed over in Korea with like did they also not vote? And
I
is
think
that
it's probably a
shared experience?
generational thing. I think it's probably something that was
Interesting, okay.
more normal for younger people, especially in that circumstance where you had just left home
Right, where
and
you
then
have
you
to
left
do
the
this extra
country.
work, right?
It's not the same as if like I didn't have this experience, but I would imagine if you were 18 and you live at home
Yeah.
and you could just follow your parents or whomever else you know that's going to vote
Mhm.
and participate that way.
Mhm.
So I don't know if other people didn't vote. I just know that I didn't. And people
Okay.
came from all over the world. So everybody wasn't in the same situation or had
Right,
the same
right, right, right.
perspective about having lived in New York and
Right.
knowing that it's a blue state
Mhm.
and just going like, I'm happy to have the win.
Right.
Um,
They may not have felt they may have felt more pressure to do it cuz yeah.
right. They
Okay.
might have lived in a swing state or something
Right.
like that. So that's my first election where I was able to vote, but I always wanted to get involved in politics in some way.
Yeah.
Through the conversations, I always gravitated toward the personalities who like drove the conversation, or my perspective,
Mhm.
or my perception. It was
Mhm.
like CNN
Mhm.
and, Fox News and whatever. And then when I came back from the military, I went to school. I started doing podcasting, just tinkering around.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happened and podcasting blew up.
Mhm.
I came across a lot of political podcasts. And since I'm doing podcasts for clients, I
Mhm.
said, oh, we should set something up where we can discuss these political topics without being super partisan, super divisive, where we can
Mhm.
actually say, like, even if we disagree, how did you get there?
Yeah.
I think a lot of that is missing in the discourse. And so that's how I came to like reach out to you, because I said, who can I reach out to locally that will understand the medium of podcasting? Generally, that's like a younger person.
Mhm.
Um, and who might be listening to these kinds of sources now to have an
Mhm.
idea of like, oh, that's the conversation that we need to have in this area.
Yeah.
And we live in the capital of New York. So
Mhm.
I figured if I can connect with somebody who's in that space already,
Mhm.
maybe we can network through and get something done.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. And so if you look on, like, I think I probably land a bit more, maybe a lot more, to the left than you do. And
I think it's a common misconception for me.
You think
I
so?
think everybody that I meet thinks I'm what they are. For the most part, like depending on, because what
Okay.
happens is we find common ground.
Right.
And so everybody just assumes, like, people used to come up to me when I worked at the bank and be like, because I talk like a normal person, that I support Trump or whatever.
Mhm.
I didn't support Trump. I never supported Trump.
Mhm.
I'm a very liberal person.
Yeah.
I just think that, like, as liberals or progressives, I prefer to say progressive.
So would you identify as you would call yourself a liberal?
I would say that I'm a progressive populist. That's
Oh
what I
yeah,
tell people.
right. Okay. Got
Yeah.
it. I'm back.
Because like you can't like litmus test me. I have to know
Right.
what the details are of something.
right, right.
And I think that we lose that a lot, especially
The
at being
nuance.
liberals.
Yeah, yeah.
Is where they'll go, well, you're either for or against. And it's like, well, I need to know the details of what you're proposing.
Mm.
And I think that's kind of where I get lost in like the partisan divide. Because I don't know if that's middle. I don't know if that's technically left. People who are on either side will
Mhm.
think I'm either on their side or on the other side, depending on what we're talking
Depending
about.
on the conversation.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. So then my next question would be, as somebody who, if we have somebody tuning in who's like kind of in the same boat you are, where it's like, I'm interested, but I don't know enough, or I don't, I've never been super involved, but whatever it may be, right? Like, how did you feel about local politics and local government, and how has how's that viewpoint shifted or not shifted? Like, if somebody comes on and is interested, but they're like only focusing at like the federal stuff,
Well, I think it's really common to only focus, because that's what we see in the news.
right?
Because national news is what most people watch.
Yeah.
And I understand and connect the dots, as I think most people do, that local politics is important.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think like it can be a lot more boring.
It's not sexy.
That's what, yeah. It's not sexy. So, and I still kind of had that perception. Like
Yeah.
we went door knocking and I was like, this is,
Yeah.
I don't know if this is for me. Like, now I
Oh,
like talking to people.
I love a good door knocking
but it's
session.
for me, I'm kind of an introverted person.
Yeah.
Unless I can control the conversation in some kind of way,
Mm.
I feel more open in that context. Like we're doing this together, so I don't feel so.
Well, and you and I know each other,
Right.
So it's
So
not.
to go to a stranger's
Yeah.
door and to knock on it and go, hey, have you heard
Yeah.
about this person that I just met this morning?
Yeah.
In that case, who we were knocking for, I had just met and you had a pre-existing relationship with.
Mhm.
But what I found is that most people, when we did that,
Mhm.
were open to at least a conversation, whether or not
Oh,
they
yeah.
were going to support who we were advocating for.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of made me more hopeful for the podcast because
Oh, cool! I didn't
Yeah.
know that. That's awesome.
yeah, because I just think that whether or not you agree with someone isn't always pertinent.
Right. Yeah.
Like you don't have to agree. There's no rule.
Yeah.
And I think that the national climate has shaped things to a point where if you're not agreeing with me, then like you're not on my side, then you're the enemy.
Well,
And
and
I think that
we're gonna like have to attack each other.
right.
I think that's why people shy away from the door knocking piece of it, because it feels very high stakes. Not that it's not high stakes, you want them to vote for your candidate, but like I think they think that people are gonna like scream at them and
I
like
think
get
you think
mad.
my perception was
Yeah,
like
actually tell me what you think.
because I'm pretty online, right?
Yeah.
So I just assume it's weird because it's a contradiction. When I go home, and I'm from upstate New York, right? I'm
Mhm.
from Malone. This is at least Stephanics District, New
Oh
York
yeah, that's
21.
important. Yep.
That's a really rural, Trump supporting area
Yeah.
by and large.
Mhm.
But like I get along with everybody because I grew up there, right? I know
Right.
everybody.
Yeah, people know you as Tyler.
People might
not-
pick on me for
Yeah.
my views or whatever. We just
Sure.
give each other shit. Like it's
Yeah.
not personal.
Oh, first swear word of the podcast.
Hey. But it's not a personal thing. We're not attacking each other.
Right.
And even if we were, like, we would eat chicken wings after. You know what I mean?
Do you think you could?
Eat
Like-
chicken wings? Definitely.
No. No, not chicken. Well, sure. But like, because I think a lot of people are probably listening and are thinking, like, if they got into a real fight with somebody with not like fists, well, maybe fists, but like, you know, a conversation around politics when you have opposing views like escalated, like I think what we're seeing and how people feel is that you can't come back from that. So I would wonder if like you actually think you could, you know, kind of go to blows with somebody over political views and still be like, listen, it is what it is. Like, let's go grab a beer or whatever, or chicken wings.
Kind of. I mean, it really depends because
Yeah.
you could have some really abhorrent views where, like,
Right.
you can have your views and that's cool. Like,
Mm.
racism is one thing, right? So we'll get into that. My view on freedom of speech is that if you want to be racist, but I don't want to associate with you.
Yeah, I
Like,
don't want to.
it's your free speech to say whatever you think, and people's free speech to say whatever they think back, and that's how it's supposed to work. But
Right,
I
like,
don't want
I
to
get
hang
to
out
exercise
and like
that, yeah.
make these kind of jokes with you and like associate myself. It's not something that I'm interested in. That's not my point of view. It like crosses a principle threshold, right? So
Right.
everything doesn't cross the principle threshold. And I think people lose sight
Right.
of that because everything has become a litmus test for like whether you're left or whether you're right in the age of Trump. And I don't think
or
Trump is
one
the
or
cause
the
of
other
that.
enough.
Right, you're right.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And we see it in every way. Like right now we're kind of seeing it on the left between like Hakeem Jeffries and Zohar Mamdani and whatever they might have differences on, whether or not you are or are not sufficiently whatever they determine. And you see this on the right. They call people rhinos or whatever if they disagree, but it's like, dude, we agree on like 90% of things.
Yeah.
Like, let's figure out how to disagree and move on the other 10%. But there are some things, rightfully, I think that like they cross that principal threshold. So I just don't want to be involved with. But beyond that, I think you should be able to move forward and be like, okay, we don't agree on those things. That's cool.
Yeah.
And let's figure out where we do agree and get things done. And even if there were things that cross the principal threshold, this is how I view it. If you're a politician and you work in Congress, there's only so many seats. You have to form coalitions to get things done. And so you may end up finding that you agree with someone who you might hate the person. You might find everything they say disgusting.
Right.
But like you need the vote. So why
Right.
wouldn't you take the win on something you do
Well, 'cause
agree on?
it's going to help you deliver for the people you're elected to represent. So like,
Right. That's my view on
Yeah,
it. So
I get it.
think
No, I get
when
it.
it comes to those things, like we can have a conversation and then we can go back to not associating with each other
right, then we
on a
don't have-
social level. But if we
Yeah.
have to get something done for the community, I think it's worthwhile to like get past our own egos
Yeah.
and get that thing done,
Yeah.
but not compromise on the other things that we find to be like existential or cross that principal threshold.
So the interesting thing about Albany, kind of as like a microcosm, right, is that although Albany County has more has pockets of red, right, or like purple, as you go further out into like the rural areas surrounding it, the city of Albany is blue,
Right.
real blue. And so like it's interesting because I think that a lot of the conversations we have had is around some of the stuff that's gone on in the Democratic Party and like some of that establishment versus like whatever
Everybody else.
poor underdog's gonna try to take them on and what that means and how that functions. And I'm excited to dive into it in both areas where it is like, you know, how do we work with people who are like diametrically opposed to us, like Democrats, Republicans, whatever, But also, like, how do we address this, like, inner party fighting that is going on, that is
The
making us lose? I've
yeah.
never seen people want to lose
Well,
so bad.
the reality, my view is that there shouldn't be just two parties, right? And I think this is beyond a partisan divide. But I think with my larger point is, I guess, is within those parties, there's multiple different. This would be the caucuses, and
Yeah.
you know, there's different groups with different interests under the umbrellas of Democrat and Republican. And I think if you view it like that, then like people will say, oh, the Democrats are in a civil war or the Republicans are in a civil war. And it's like, no, they're just really big tents on both sides that have people with competing views, and they have to figure out what they want the party overall to run with. And I think that's to everybody's detriment, because there are good ideas that get stifled that way on both sides.
Yeah.
And I think if we can find places where we agree, then we can counteract that. And I think that's the establishment versus like the grassroots of the party. And I think you're seeing this now on like the populist side. Like, you will find conservative populists who agree that the millionaires and the billionaires have too much power and that we should rein that in, and that we should do things that are more pro-worker. And that's in alignment with like social democratic progressive policies. But you'll never hear about that because both parties are sidelining those people on those things. But they'll take their support and their social media presence when it comes to like propping up their overall position as a party. But they lose out on those policies. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes total sense. I think we disagree on it, and I actually feel quite strongly about this. But I actually think that the Republican Party does a way better job of like identifying power players, whoever they are, like Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Sure.
Who is...
She's someone I would consider to be a populist when I listen to her talk about the millionaires and billionaires and that kind of thing.
She's also someone I would like generally describe as an insane person.
Yeah, sure.
Who like says crazy shit. But she like accumulated this following of people who like are like, yeah, I'm into it. Great. And like they saw that and they like brought her in. Even though I am sure there were people who were like, this is so embarrassing. Like, oh my God, how humiliating that we are propping this person up who's saying stuff about like crazy lasers or whatever.
Yeah.
So the Republican Party, like, whether they want to or not, whether they think that person is like sane, they identify the fact that they are like well liked among the like voter base, and they will say like, yep, they're ours, we love Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's great. And then in the back rooms they're like, this person's insane. But Democrats like absolutely not only don't do that, like publicly eviscerate those people who to the Democrats are saying crazy shit. They're usually not, but like to like the establishment in the Democratic Party, they are. And we are consistently fighting this two-front war. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, like two-front wars, check the history books, they never turn out well. Like we need to be coming together and doing a better job of identifying like who are our voters like identifying with. Someone like AOC, I hate to break it to everyone, is somebody that like voters identify with. There's a reason her district went like majority for her and Donald Trump.
Yes.
It's because they view her as like a politician who is like authentic and genuine and delivering for her community. And yet you will never see the establishment propping her up. They may not be publicly attacking her anymore, but they're certainly not propping her up as like a party leader. She's
I think
clawing and fighting.
I think I agree entirely with your point about the Democrats, and I guess, and I agree with what you're saying about Republicans, and I think we agree on Marjorie Taylor Greene largely. The reason why I mentioned Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's very interesting when you look at on a national level. like Israel Palestine is a big issue,
Yeah.
right? She's not saying what the party is saying on that
Yeah.
issue, right?
She's also come out about and called out the Republican Party for sexism, which I was like,
Right.
all
And she's
right.
also saying, like, I don't want money go, and she's far more extreme about it than I guess I would probably be. But she's saying, and I think there are a lot of people on the right in the more grassroots section that are saying,
Mm,
I don't want to send money overseas. I want to spend money here. And I think that's something that progressives align with. We just disagree on what to spend it on.
right.
Right. But
Yeah.
we can start from like, let's get our books right
Yeah.
and determine what we have to spend on us
Mm,
instead of letting it go to defense contractors or letting it go overseas or
right.
wherever it might go.
On the Democratic side, it's more of a like, this is morally wrong.
Yeah, we
be
totally
sending-
disagree
yeah,
on how to spend
right.
it. Okay.
But the point remains that we don't want the money
But
going
she's
where it's
on liberal
going.
outlets saying things like, yes, I agree about Israel. I think those kids, Palestinian kids, Israeli kids, American kids, I don't want anybody to get hurt, right? That's not typical of what's going on across the political spectrum now. I think Republicans, rather, are good at letting their members go out and do that kind of thing. And then,
And not publicly going after them.
right.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so that's to your point about Democrats not really putting those people forward. They're
Mhm.
happy to take the seat, right? Because they get the number, they assume the vote. But Republicans, by and large, are much more focused on the mechanics of governing over the long term. And they have been for 30 years. So this is how they, like the Federalist Society, and how they built up slowly their majority on the Supreme Court, what they did to Obama by not letting him appoint somebody to the court. Like, they're just much more focused on how do we win. I watched Mitch McConnell growing up, and this is his last term, but yeah, it should be his last term.
Oh, really? What gives that
It
away?
should be a lot of people's last terms just based on how long they've been there, and we would solve a lot of problems.
And we will be bringing that point back to local government.
But somebody said to him at one point something to the effect of like, what kind of candidate do you want, like, as a Republican in these districts? And he just said, whoever can win, right? And beyond that, like, he just lets them do their thing, and because they want the seat, and they want the Supreme Court seat, and they want to make sure, like, they wanted judicial appointments and things like that. Democrats, in my view, have never been focused on that. They've been focused on personal power. Not to say that Republicans aren't in the leadership, because they sure are. Like, it's a whole problem in politics. But in terms of building the party, right? So they have a backbench because they I don't like anybody on their backbench.
But no, but that's a good point. They build their bench. And I think it's interesting because I see what you're saying about like focusing on the building blocks and like the long-term strategy and stuff. I actually think it's not necessarily that, I mean, they are better at it in practice because they're doing it, but like, I think that Democrats specifically right now, like, we can't get out of our own way to do it, because think how much time, energy, and resources are being spent like on in-party fighting.
Yeah, well, I think
Like,
it's
how
fake
can
in-party
you-
fighting because I think it's on behalf of the donors. Like, I think the people who are fighting the younger progressive candidates who we see will win. Like, they will win even in places where Trump might
But how
win.
much harder do they have to work because like the support, I mean, we're seeing it with Mamdani,
It's
right?
true.
Like, I mean,
they all look
Mamdani
like
is the
jackasses
Democratic-
for not having endorsed. I don't necessarily think that an endorsement really means anything because people are going to vote for who they're going to vote for. Like,
I think
nobody
publicly
really-
not endorsing means something. I see
Yeah.
what you're saying.
but I don't think anybody's looking for, like, I'm going to vote because Chuck Schumer told me. Like, you know
Yeah,
what I
probably
mean?
not.
Nobody cares.
Yeah.
But if it's Obama or if it's somebody who has some like gravitas attached to their name, okay,
Sure.
maybe there are some people who might be affected by that. But by and large, like, I don't really care who the Democratic leadership, because AOC beat Joe Crowley. Like,
Yeah, she did.
you know what I mean?
Yes, she
It's
did.
like he was in
Yes,
Democratic
she
leadership.
did.
So why do I care? Like, somebody, I don't know if you've seen this, but like, there is I think it's a primary challenge to Nancy Pelosi.
Did I ever?
Yeah. And like,
That's
from what I saw, she's
AOC's
doing pretty well. I don't remember who it is. So
It's
know,
AOC's
former chief of staff
field-
or communications officer or
yeah,
something.
but like was instrumental in the campaign. I can't remember what. I mean, I don't think it was campaign manager, but it was something like quite high up. So, I mean, the guy knows how to campaign and win an election.
I guess my point, yeah. So like, I think we just engage these people and beat them. And that's how you I think somebody's gonna in the next cycle. You'll find somebody who will go against Hakeem Jeffries for what he's done to Mamdani. It's like, why
Mhm.
would you know?
And for the fact that, like, if I see anybody send one more strongly worded letter, I'm
Oh, I
gonna
just saw
lose
one
my
today. I
mind.
can't
Oh
remember what it
my
was.
god.
It was a strongly worded letter to Trump about something, and it's like these folks. They just I don't think they get it.
He laughs when he opens those up.
I
I
don't think
would.
he
I
opens
would
them.
laugh. You don't think he opens them?
No,
Okay, fair enough.
I don't. Most things people think he does. I don't think he writes his own tweets. There's a lot of things I don't think he
Yeah.
does. You know, he just tells
We've
someone
gotten
to.
on an entire national politics trend.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah, we
We
need
were
to bring it
talking
back.
about Democrats, the parties in general.
Yes.
Um,
General commentary on the state of the parties. Tyler and I could talk about this stuff forever. But this politics podcast is going to focus locally. And so I think it'll be interesting to kind of look through this lens of like the national trend of parties and what's going on and like see how it applies locally, because like I think the root of where a lot of this stuff starts is locally, right? And I think
Well, that's what we're going to do in our interview, right? Because
Yeah.
we're going to talk to Dylan Hewitt. Dylan Hewitt is running he's running in the Democratic primary for
Yep.
New York 21 to
Yeah.
potentially unseat Elise Stefanik, who
Woohoo.
may or may not run for governor as well. But that's
Unclear.
inherently a local thing.
At
Even-
least if you want to come on the podcast and tell us what your plans are,
please
great.
do. Please do. Her office is right down the street from me because of how the districts are gerrymandered. I'm not in her district, but her office is right there.
Oh, perfect.
But that is inherently like it's a federal position,
Mm-hmm.
right? But it's local. Like
Yeah.
it ties much more closely to local politics than people think.
Mm-hmm.
I think people don't often consider like congressional representatives in the House unless they have a big name like Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example. Most members, I think people are not familiar with, but those people, I think work like you see it with Paul Tonko. They work closely with local government and on local issues,
Mhm.
and they advocate for the community on a federal level.
Mm-hmm.
So there's some space to talk about federal things
Oh,
from a
of
local
course.
lens.
Yes, of course. But I think like so rarely do we get to look at it from a local lens of like, you know, I don't think people necessarily think to themselves like, when was the last time I saw my representative? If you're represented like by Paul Tonko,
I
like
think
I
that.
am,
I
saw
think
him
that
last
because
week.
I live in Elise Stefanik's district. Or well, no, I'm sorry. I live in Paul Tonko's district. My
Yeah.
family lives in Elise Stefanik's district.
Yeah, yeah.
And they've never seen her.
Right.
Right. And it is a very big district, so I would grant that. But for the amount of years that she's been in the district, my
Right.
expectation would be that you would go out and see people. Local politics, especially here in Albany, we don't have that problem. And we see our leadership all the time.
But we don't always know. Isn't that
right.
interesting? And that's like part of it. I think that was like part of wanting to do this podcast with you is like I want people to like recognize who their local elected officials are if they walk by them in a restaurant. And that's not always the case right now. Not to fault or put the onus on like the residents or the voters. I think it's not top of mind because local government isn't always top of mind, but like I want us to put it at the forefront of our thought processes and our like day-to-day operations, because unfortunately, I think local government and local elected officials oftentimes get to operate in a space where there is little accountability because eyes are not on them in the way that they are on other people. And like you may not even know who your county legislator is or who your common
Right.
council member is, or
Most people don't.
right. Most people don't know what a county legislator is. So full transparency to the audience, I ran for Albany County Legislature last year. We'll get into it one time. But like we went door to door and I can't tell you how many times people said, "Oh, what is the county legislature? What does it do?"
Right.
Like people didn't even know about the body and what they have a say over, and the county legislature is like quite powerful. So that is like frustrating that this body holds all of this power and like budgetary allocation power and like oftentimes get to operate kind of in the shadows because like we just
Yeah,
don't
and
know as
therefore
much. It's not sexy.
unaccountable,
Right.
right? Not to say that everybody's ill intentions, because they're not. There's a lot of great people in local government, but
I
because
mean,
you're not
yeah.
that focused on it as a voter, they're less accountable because, you might show up. People who do participate might be just check the box for someone they know, or
Mm-hmm.
because they're in a particular party
The name sounds
or
familiar.
whatever. Yeah. And we got some of that when we were door knocking. Oh, I know that family,
Yeah.
I grew up with them or whatever. I'm going to vote for them. But they might not know like what are the ins and outs of the policies that any particular candidate might be advocating for that might
Right.
benefit their community.
Right.
And they're not always like divisive policies. They're like things very, very local to your community that
Right.
you would care about.
And then there comes this element, I think, when local government starts to function that way, where elected officials, I think sometimes people feel entitled to positions, for one reason or another. Either you've like known the right people, not the right direction,
Sure.
like the right correct people, for a certain amount of time, or you've been in the seat for decades, and it's
That
like,
happens a lot.
yeah, I've been here for X number of years, like this is mine. And like nobody is entitled to any elected office. You have to earn that right to serve in that capacity. You are a public servant. And when that starts to fall away and you start to think like this is my seat, like no, it's not. You got a job review every couple of years.
Yeah, you have
and
to
you
earn it
better
every
be
time.
able to show at your job review that or your performance review that you delivered. And
I think we need to normalize that message because
Yeah.
we see that was it. Well, I mean, I'm going to speak nationally for a moment just because it makes sense in this context. But
it's going to be politics next state over in a minute.
well,
I'm kidding.
because it's party specific, but like David Hogg, right?
Oh,
That was kind of his point. Like, if you're not doing the things that we send you here to do, not necessarily the party, but the voters,
mhm.
then we're going to primary you. I
Yeah.
think you should be primaried every time. It doesn't have to be like personal. It doesn't have to be attack, but like you
It's
should be
not.
tested on what your results were for your community, right?
Yeah.
And that's happening on a local level, but that was kind of his position for the Democratic Party on a federal level.
Yeah.
They pushed back pretty hard against that, and he no longer has that
And
role.
why do you think they push back against it?
Right.
Like,
But that's the point that you're getting at.
yeah, it's like, there's this really great moment in the Knock Down the House video or documentary on Netflix. I like literally could recite the movie because I watched it so many times, but it was the documentary that they did on AOC, Cori Bush, Paula Swearingen, and Amy Villela. I'm so sorry, Amy. And there's a moment where Cori Bush is talking to a group of people, and she was running against she was running for a congressional seat, and she was running against like a seat that was held by a long reigning, very well known political family. Like the dad had held it before the son now, who held it for decades. And one of the things she says to this group of people when she's talking to them is like, it's no different than when you have an employee who's been around for a while and has gotten just like a little too comfortable and maybe like a little lazy. And, they are kind of coming in late and they're showing up to the meetings and they're there, but like, are they there and producing, or are they just kind of there?
Right.
And you don't even realize that until you get someone new in the position. And all of a sudden that new person comes in and they're full of energy and they have all
Right.
these ideas and, they're looking at problems from a new perspective. And you go like, oh my God, like, holy crap, that's very different. And like, look at the difference. And I think, and she's like, that's what it's like, And I think she nailed it when she said that, because I can think of 1,000,001 situations where people have either experienced or told me about it, where it's like, that's the same energy. And I just want them to be like, right, you've lived it, you've seen it. And that, if that's not okay in our workplace, that can't be okay in our elected representation.
I agree with that. I think, I think they're a little bit different, but I understand the analogy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think if you have a good employee, you want to keep that employee around if they do a good job, right? But
Well,
I
yeah.
think that turnover should be a
And
normal
they're
thing.
good.
In
Like
politics.
they started out great. And they started out with that, maybe that level of energy.
And then you get complacent. Like that happens. I think that's human nature in a lot of
Complacent,
cases. But
yeah.
some politicians do a very good job, and I think that they should be able to continue to do that. But I also think that turnover should be a normal thing in politics, especially generational turnover, because I think a lot of time people lose touch of what's going on right now
Mm-hmm.
because they when they ran, and maybe they did a good job for a really long time, but like things inevitably move on
Right.
in society, and you might lose touch with like what the more pressing issues are of today versus when you came in.
Or just like what the experience is like.
Or if you're in the office for a longer period of time, you might be looking at what's the next step for you, and that might take your focus off like what's going on in the community.
Right.
To a degree that like, okay, maybe it's time for somebody new. Maybe it's time for you to do the next thing, whatever that is.
And you know what? I don't know. I mean, I think we see this at all levels, but I really have seen it at the local level just so like blatantly, but also like so much where people stay in the seats. And like, I have all the respect in the world for anybody who goes into public service. Like, it is not easy on the local level. It's not sexy. It's usually not your full-time job. It's
Right.
like the issues are big and close to home, and like the folks you're trying to serve are like your neighbors who can like come knock on your door and be like, hey, why didn't that speed bump get put in? Like I have all the respect in the world, and I think anybody who goes into it is like really admirable. And I have all the appreciation in the world for everything they've done in the position. With all of that said, I do think at some point it's okay to say, I have given so much to this city, this county, this town, this whatever, and this neighborhood, and say, like, okay, I've given this so much. Now it's time for me to, like, find somebody else or help identify somebody else who is going to give that level for the next X number of years.
Yeah, I think that should be normal. And I don't necessarily think that it should be family. I think that happens a lot across the country, you know, and we see it on the presidential level or whatever, but it happens a lot more, I think, in local politics because you just know the people.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, this guy did a good job.
They're your neighbors, they're your
his
brother-in-law,
brother, his cousin, his wife might do a really good job. And I know the family and they're good people, whatever the case may be. So I think that's a really good point. We have to wrap this episode up because we have a guest standing by.
Ooh. Now everyone's going to know we filmed it all on one night.
No, that's okay. Because we talked about it. So, but we're going to talk to Dylan Hewitt, and he is running on a federal level. But we're going to talk to him about the localities within the district and how he's going to help them and how he's going to interface with those.
And he's a local guy.
He's a local guy, yeah. So it ties back, right?
We're desperate to make sure you all understand it ties back.
Yeah. Well, I want to make sure that people understand that, like, we're talking about local politics because that's how we want to connect with each other on a community level. But everything ties together. You know, it's all one ecosystem for our community.
Yeah.
And I think we see that more in this area in particular because Paul Tonko is everywhere. So he feels like a local guy.
He does feel
like that's my experience. But he's a federal office holder, but he's everywhere. So he's where all the local leadership is as well. I think we should expect that of particularly of our House reps.
Yeah. One side note to Paul Tonko, because I think you deserve to know this. There was like one day where I had to go to multiple events in a day, and I swear we went to like 3 events in a row, like hour after hour, and Paul Tonko was like 10 minutes ahead of me at every single one. He was just going.
He's everywhere.
He had his sneakers on. He was going. And I was like, that is the energy I want all my elected officials to bring. I want them 10 minutes ahead of me to the next event. If I'm going to 3, I hope you're going to 8.
Yeah. Yeah, he's super accessible.
But you're right. We do have to wrap it up. So here is our, I guess, parting words, our call to action, if you will. We're going to be, recording and filming probably as much as we can. But we're planning on releasing episodes on a bi-weekly basis. So what you can do is you can make sure to tune in and listen. You can send any questions you have to katewoodforalbany@gmail.com, and we will try to set aside some time each episode to see if we have any questions that have come in or topics you want to see us talk about. We're always looking to chat with guests, movers and shakers in the community. So if you or someone you know wants to come in and tell us about what your connection is locally into local politics, we want you here. So this is going to be exciting. I'm excited.
I'm very excited.
You wouldn't know it, but I am. And we are so excited that you guys are coming along for this journey with us. So thank you so much. And this is Politics Next Door.